Okay. All right, so let's get going. So first and foremost, I would like to just start off by saying hello and thank you for joining us for the SPUR Student Experience Panel. My name is Rebecca and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm an academic advisor with the Rouser College of Natural Resources, and I'm the SPUR coordinator. So I will be serving as a moderator for this session, and then I also have with me Temple Byers and Sarah Rhodes assisting with the moderation of this information session as well. Sarah used to be our former SPUR coordinator, and Temple also formerly was a SPUR coordinator and is our RC and our scheduler. So I will pass it on to Temple and Sarah to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Temple Byers, pronouns she, they, and I am an academic advisor, used to do summer SPUR, and then also am your enrollment manager for the college. So if you have trouble ever getting into any units, I'm the person you reach out to. Thanks. Sarah?
Hi everyone, happy to be here. My name is Sarah Rhodes. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently the interim assistant dean for the Office of Instruction and Student Affairs. And previously I was the fall and spring spur coordinator.
Great, thank you so much, Temple and Sarah. Okay, so to start off, I just want to discuss the outline for today's information session before introducing our panelists. So after we introduce our panel, we'll go through some basic information about the SPUR program, and we'll open the Q&A feature, and you can send us your questions. Temple and myself will be monitoring the questions, and then we'll direct them to the panel in an orderly fashion. We expect all participants to abide by the UC Berkeley principles of community so that we can maintain a safe, caring, and humane environment. And we'll be removing individuals who violate these principles. And then, as I mentioned already, we will be recording the session. Okay, and so now that we have all these logistics out of the way, I do want to introduce our three panelists that are joining us. So we have Allison Hipple, Eve Brogan, and Nadia Mayer. Our panelists will go ahead and introduce themselves. Panelists, if you could please share your name, pronouns, major, and the SPUR lab that you were in last fall. We can start with Allison.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison, pronoun she, her. I'm a first year transfer, so I'm a junior, but first year here, super excited. I worked in the Niogi lab last semester, and I'm continuing my work this semester. And my major is genetics and plant bio.
Thank you so much, Allison. Eve, would you like to go next?
Hi everyone, my name's Eve Brogan. I'm a third year and I'm a double major in environmental science with a biological science concentration and ecosystem management and forestry with a professional forestry track. I worked in the Miranda Redmond lab studying silviculture in Southwest Colorado, and I'm going to continue my work there this semester. I work under Jill Revenis is my uh like the grad student that I report to. Oh, and I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, my name is Nadia, she, her. I'm a conservation and resource studies major, and I study agroecology and plant physiology. I was also in the Redmond lab, but working with Yarrow, and we were working on a restoration project that's also known as the PICA project, which is focusing on the physiological traits and drought resilience in pinyon pines in also similar regions, but the southeast of California mostly.
Okay, great. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So now I just want to start by giving us a quick overview of the SPUR program. So SPUR, the Sponsored Projects for Undergraduate Research, encourages faculty and undergraduates in the Rouser College of Natural Resources to collaborate on research projects by providing a grant to support their joint project. So the funding for this program is generously donated by Rouser College alumni. Students may participate in the SPUR program by applying to a faculty-initiated project or by creating a student-initiated project. So the panel, this panel in particular will be highlighting how to navigate applying to faculty-initiated projects, and currently students can submit their applications for up to 3 faculty-initiated projects And the application window will close on January 27th at 4 p.m. And to apply, you'll need a resume, a cover letter, and unofficial transcripts. And additionally, some SPUR projects will also require an interview before selection. Okay, so we have a couple questions that we want to start off with, and I'm going to list them all now so that you all, as our panelists in the audience, can start thinking about them. And the Q&A feature is open so that you may start submitting your questions as well. But for the first few questions, so the first one, what do you know now that you wish you knew back when you were first applying to SPUR projects? The second question, how did you navigate the resume and cover letter for the SPUR application and what resources did you use? And our third question will be, what did the supervision look like in your fall SPUR lab? Did you primarily work with the faculty or postdocs or graduate students? Okay, so we'll start off with question one. I'll repeat it. What do you know now about SPUR that you wish you knew back when you were first applying to SPUR projects? So let's see, Allison, do you want to start us off again?
Sure. Let me think. I think one thing that I wasn't sure about, like I just wasn't clear on it when I first applied to SPUR, was that at the end of the semester, my PI had all the undergrads submit just like a little like blurb about, hey, this is the research I did, and here's some like slides. I think it's probably different for each PI, but they just need something to be like, okay, cool, you did your work. You get the pass grade on your SPUR units. So there is a little bit at the end that some PIs might have, is something that I learned.
Great, thank you. Eve, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I wish I knew that, okay, so I suppose from an outside perspective before or like while I was applying, I was pretty intimidated by the process. Like it's a lab with like a faculty member and that can seem intimidating and it definitely was for me. But once I was accepted into the role, well, first off, I interviewed with grad students, so that uh lowered the intimidation factor for sure. And then like they're just like real people doing really cool work and really cool science. And so working under Jill, my the grad student that I worked under, she was like my main contact, and that was something that I wasn't expecting. I suppose I didn't exactly know what the structure was internally for working in the lab. But so then it became a lot less intimidating once I was inside the lab working with like mainly that grad student. So yeah, a lot less intimidating once you're on the inside.
Go ahead, Nadia. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say similarly. Also, one thing I think I wish I would have known is that, um, at least in my experience, they really considered all the experiences on your resume. I know someone just asked a question about what should you do if you don't have lab experience before, but the feedback that I got, even though I had just a teeny bit of what was more like fieldwork experience outside and not necessarily in a lab, they really valued that and they know that you're students. And so I found that really helpful to know that they're really looking at you holistically and your interests as well. So I think that was really encouraging and that more people should know that they don't necessarily prioritize people who have just worked in labs before because every lab is different.
Thank you. Okay, for our second question, how did you navigate creating resumes and personal statements for the SPUR applications, and what resources did you use? We can start again with Allison and just go in the same order for these first few questions.
Yeah, so one really great resource. I can't remember if I did this before or after applying to SPUR, but I went to the Career Center and worked on my resume with hold on, I'm forgetting her name. She's like our person.
Jen Racklin.
Jen Racklin, there we go. And she is fantastic. You can make an appointment with her, or she has like resume labs that she'll do in the Mulford Student Center. So that was one thing that was super helpful because she really knows her stuff and she knows like small tweaks that will elevate your resume to like a really extra good one.
Yeah, so to answer this question, well, first I went through all the different labs and I isolated the ones that I wanted to apply to. And then for looking at the descriptions for those, I made sure to like really, really focus in on what the role was going to be, like their description of the role. And then I thought about what personal experiences I had that would prepare me for those roles in particular. And I made sure to highlight those in my cover letter, in my resume, as like making sure to highlight, like using specific wording maybe that highlights the things that they want. So, say for my application process, I ended up working a lot in R. And so I made sure to highlight that I had previous R experience from classes and from my own personal interest. So things like that, like making sure that you are putting your best foot forward in terms of how how you want to portray yourself as being very qualified for that position is what I would say there.
Yeah, I also definitely tailored my responses to the skills that they were looking for. And I think to also emphasize again what I said, not to discount and think of your skills as only isolated to things that you may have done in academia, but skills are really interdisciplinary. And maybe if you had another job like working in a bakery or things like that, I always am comparing my different experiences outside of the lab to ones inside. And so making that like more approachable. But also relating other experience that you have had inside UC Berkeley as well. Um, and also the resume samples are really helpful for me in organizing if you don't have the time to or you can't make it to the resume labs. And those are also on the Career Center website, I believe. So that's what I used.
Great, thank you. Okay, and for our next question, what did the supervision look like in your fall SPUR lab? And did you primarily work with the faculty or postdocs or graduate students? Allison, go ahead.
I mostly worked with a postdoc named Jeffrey Chen. He's fantastic. Yeah, I mostly worked with him. I worked with, or rather, we worked with a couple of other lab members, including like lab techs and then like resident researchers. But I think it's pretty typical to have like a mentor who is your person and is in charge of you.
Yeah, I definitely agree about having a particular point person. I worked under a grad student. Her name is Jill Revenes. I love her. She's great. Um, Yeah, so we would meet about once or, well, like either once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on if I had questions or anything. She also made herself available to me, like if I had questions along the way during my work that I could email her about. But then, yeah, we would have those like biweekly check-ins to like see what next steps would be in terms of the work I was doing.
Yeah, I worked with also a grad student, a PhD student Yarrow, in also the Redmond lab, and we did a similar biweekly check-in. I'm sure that was a structure facilitated by the lab, it sounds like, but it worked really well because oftentimes I could go in whenever I wanted, which was really that was something I wasn't expecting, was it to be so flexible and to really have that independence and kind of gain that confidence in myself that oh this kind of data collection I can do and I can be trained and feel like I have experience with that. Also at the same time we did have an invite to go to the lab meetings. I wasn't able to make it, but I hope that this semester I will get to know more people inside the lab and other projects. So it was really cool to feel more like a collaborator in that way. Um, and I think that if you don't get the chance to meet your PI, like I haven't yet, that you could definitely reach out to them, and I'm sure that they'd be open to meeting the students as well. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. So we're going to move on to some student questions now, and our panelists feel free to answer some of them, all of them, no particular order at this point. Our first one, how would you advise doing applications or interviews when you have little to no research experience yet?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Allison, if you wanted to jump in. So if you don't have any research experience yet, I think Nadia was touching on this earlier that you can emphasize other experiences that you have that highlight skills that a research lab would value. Say if you worked at a job where there was a lot of like emailing or communication or like interpersonal communication, that's super valuable. Task management in general, super valuable. So not having research experience is definitely helpful, of course, but then like if you emphasize those other skills that you have outside of academia, I think that's great. I also coming into SPUR, I had no research experience as well. So then I just did what I just mentioned, like emphasizing those other skills that I had.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, it's totally fine to be upfront about it and be like, I don't have research experience, but I'm so excited to learn how to do these things and get to experience it. I mean, I think that the PIs and the mentors that are like looking at the interviews and the applicants, they love to see enthusiasm. So you can totally like push that forward and be like, I don't have research experience, but I'm a great learner and I want to learn. And your stuff is cool. And I don't know. Yeah. Enthusiasm is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, just to remind everyone, the whole point of this program is for students that have not had research experience ahead of time. So that should never put you at a deficit.
Yeah, also, I'm so glad that you mentioned someone, I think Allison mentioned classes also, connecting things that you learned in class to why you may be interested in that research experience or certain labs that you did or skills that you learned during the labs. I think that that's awesome, and they can see that you're connecting that to the work that they're doing and where they might be using, or if you have questions or techniques that you are like, wow, I'd love to learn more about this, to use this in this way because these are my interests. I think they, like Allison was saying, they love to see that excitement and curiosity.
Thank you. Our next question, should the resume be different for each position we apply to? And I know some of you touched already on tailoring the resume for each position, but feel free to add anything else if you have anything.
I know that you want to tailor each cover letter. You don't necessarily have to change your resume, but you definitely would want to write three distinct cover letters.
Yeah, I agree. Your resume can be different. Like if the positions that you're applying for are like radically different, like say one is like you're in a lab doing lab like desk wet work or whatever, or you're like doing field work, you might want to emphasize different things. Like, oh, I volunteered with a restoration group, or I really like hiking or something for field work. And then you can talk more about like organization and task management and stuff like that for working in a indoor lab setting.
Yeah, I think I also ended up keeping my resumes all the same. Um, but if you feel like you have a breadth of experiences, feel free to change them, I think, as well. And maybe any of the other facilitators can talk about like, because I would love to know about resume length as well. I know that's something that can be confusing sometimes, and whether it's better to be concise or whether it's better to include all of your experiences.
Yeah, I can speak to resume length. So, in general, you want to keep your resume to one page, especially, being so young and new to the professional and research world, a lot of you know, naturally it is going to be one page. And that's where kind of like tailoring your resume can come into play. Like, okay, like I really want to highlight this experience on my resume over this experience, or I really want to like bulk up this position that I held and like talk a lot about that in my resume versus, you know, maybe something you did in high school.
I think also if you have something that you touch on in your resume that you want to go more in depth in and you don't have the space, I mean, that's perfect for putting in the cover letter and saying, I did this and this is how it's applicable to this position I'm up to.
Great, thank you for everyone's feedback. Next question. Do you think that if you are currently taking lab classes, we should include them even though the class just started?
Yes, I did that. As a trans, I didn't have any Berkeley classes yet, but I was like, hey, I'm taking this class and I think it'll be really applicable to what I'm studying, what I would study in your lab. So I would totally include them if you think they're
Yeah, I just second that totally because you're going to be transferring skills throughout the semester and maybe even beyond too. So,
Great, thank you. Next question. Is there a particular GPA requirement to apply? Do people need a high GPA to get in?
I mean, I can speak to this. So the minimum GPA to serve on a faculty initiated SPUR project is a 2.0. So you just need a 2.0 to be minimally eligible. And I'm 99% sure that the SPUR application doesn't even ask you what your GPA is.
Thank you. Next question. If two faculty members were to accept my application, would I be able to choose which project to take on?
I can also answer this one. So, if you were offered two SPUR positions, first of all, amazing, great job. And then also, you know, you are only allowed to serve on one SPUR project per semester. So, um, you know, write your pros and cons list, weigh which one you want to accept, and then you want to send a really nice email to the research mentor and let them know, like, hey, I'm no longer going to be, you know, pursuing your project, and then that way also the faculty can reach out to the next person on their list.
Thank you. Next question. With so many qualified applicants, what sets apart certain people to get the position over their equally qualified peers?
Yeah, I can talk about this. I think it's been mentioned by a couple people already, but like I think just general enthusiasm, just like a love of learning, because you learn a lot on the job, and a love of learning and enthusiasm for science and for just learning new things, I think is really, really valuable. I think if you emphasize that a lot in a cover letter, in any interview you might have, I think that's really, really valuable.
Yeah, doing your research on the lab so you can speak directly and lots of enthusiasm and curiosity.
yeah, I think relating other like doing in speaking to the doing research on the labs beforehand, coming in and just being naturally curious about the positions, like, oh, I looked at their website and wow, this did really interest me, and I it shows that you would be working in that lab coming from a real place and rather like, oh, I just want this as an experience, but that it's something that maybe could move your like be moving your career a little bit forward, and you're going to pursue opportunities in that lab or in related labs elsewhere. That just makes it feel more natural as well. And then it's more genuine for yourself as well. And that always makes things easier. And I think really shines through.
Oh, great, thank you. Our next question, how do you think would be the best way to incorporate the classes, just writing in the resume, the education, or inserting the lab for highlighting it as a lab class?
Yes.
I think
Oh, sorry. Go ahead if you want. Okay. For my resume, I tailored which classes I mentioned in a little like relevant coursework section of my resume. So I wrote down which classes I had already taken that were the most relevant to the position I was applying for, and I wrote those first. So then, yeah, I wrote like my environmental science related classes, my like stat related classes, and then I talked about like lab classes after that. So yeah, I think just having a little relevant coursework section would be really helpful for that. And then yeah, just based on which um, position you're applying for, then tailor that accordingly.
I think also just to add on, they are getting a copy of your unofficial transcript. So if you don't have space, you don't have to include it in your resume. And it's something that you can really easily talk about in your cover letter, especially in terms of skills that you learn in classes. Be like, I learned how to do this in this class. And I think it'll be applicable to your lab.
Yeah, I didn't end up listing my classes because of the transcript as well, because I didn't have room, so that's completely fine. And then I did end up mentioning classes in the cover letter with those same skills. So just seconding what Allison said.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that I dropped some Berkeley career engagement resources in the chat, some sample resumes, and then information on how to create an effective resume.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next question, is it better to list specific courses on our resume for SPUR or list them as a topic of the courses? For example, like writing Chem 3A versus organic chemistry.
I can answer that. So I think, because these are Berkeley faculty and grad students reading the resumes, you can kind of put the Chem 3A, but in general, you want to put like organic chemistry. You really want to spell it out. And, if you're making a resume, hopefully you're using it to apply to things beyond just SPUR. So writing out the course in general, I think will be much more helpful. And not all of our graduate students know what the like lower division classes are. So I think just the more information you can provide, the better.
Yeah. Okay. Our next question, in the cover letter, how would you distribute talking about yourself and your experiences versus talking about your fit with the project or the lab?
I feel like those could be all molded together in one. So talking about how your experiences have made you into someone who would want to be in that lab and how you think that that would um be advantageous to your dynamic or I don't know, I think that you don't have to separate those two, but those two things will naturally maybe flow together um, in a way. And thinking about before you write your cover letter and even before you apply to the lab too, how do your experiences make you a good fit for that lab?
I second that. Weave it all together.
Thank you. And remember, this is something that Jen Racklin can also help you with in Career Center, so feel free to take your questions to Jen as well. Okay. Next question. Are you able to answer the average general range of applicants per project? This is something I can answer. Um, Honestly, it really varies. It's hard to say this semester because applications are still coming in, but like for example, last semester we saw a range. We're seeing like one application that had, or one project that had over 30 applications, and there's some that sometimes get less than 10. So it really ranges. Sarah Temple, have you seen something similar in the past?
Yeah, it definitely varies depending on the project. Some, yeah, might get as few as like three, some get, yeah, upwards of 30. And typically the SPUR coordinator will send out an email with some of the like lower application, sorry, applications with lower submissions. And so, if you are still on the fence about like which of projects to apply to, maybe you um, go for one of the lower application pools and see if maybe that secures you something.
Yes, and I will be sending out an email with our projects that have a lower amount of applicants sometime tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, thank you. Our next question. Where do we submit the application? I'm finding resources for it, but not an application. Sarah, are you able to put the link into the chat for us where students can find the application? So you'll find it in the postings of the individual project at the bottom of each posting. You'll find the link there. So Sarah will be adding that to the chat. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. For our next question, how does the scheduling work? Will it conflict with your courses, with your course times, or is it more flexible?
I can hop into that one right away. Since you're working with usually a postdoc or a graduate student in the lab, you just work with them and they'll help to work around your schedule and you can find times where you can meet and do stuff that won't conflict. It's not like a class where there's a set time that is inflexible. It is a flexible and constantly changing schedule, or at least that's how it is for me.
I do think that occasionally some of the projects have like a lab meeting that they really don't want you to miss, and then like they'll put that on the posting. But in general, yeah, the times are built around your guys' schedules.
Thank you. Next question, could we put our high school classes in the coursework section, such as AP or IB classes, or should the coursework only contain college courses?
So I actually taught NatRes 76 last semester, and Jen gave a really great resume presentation to all of those freshmen. And she said that like high school courses are pretty much the same no matter where you go. So you don't really need to put like high school classes like AP chemistry and things like that. Like unless you took something like super like unique and like exciting, you can put that down, but yeah, you don't need to put your AP chemistry, AP bio, things like that.
That was actually the last question we currently have. We can give it a minute. If anyone has any other questions, please put that into the Q&A function so that we can get your questions answered. If not, we will wrap up. Nope. There's another one that just came in. Okay. Was there a need to prepare for difficult questions in your interviews? How did you prepare for your interviews in general?
Yeah, sure, I can answer this one. So when I got the email saying they wanted to interview me, the grad student I ended up working with in the end, sent me a list of questions she was going to ask. So I prepared that way. I read through the Redmond Lab website, like the whole thing, making sure I knew what they were studying. Like, I mean, of course, I had genuine interest in it already because I had looked at the project description. But yeah, just making sure I knew like the nuances, whatnot. Yeah, so yeah, then I just, with that information, knowing what the job itself entailed, like knowing what skills they wanted. So I then knew what to emphasize in terms of how I answered those questions that they gave me.
I second going through the faculty website and just familiarizing yourself with all of their projects. Consider yourselves lucky because when I was applying to SPUR, about half of them were down. So that was an experience.
Yeah, me too. I have not much to add for that as well. And I think even just having written notes next to you for the interview in case you want to refer back to, because sometimes in interviews I get caught up in the conversation. I forget, oh, actually, I do want to mention this and mention this skill or mention this experience or ask this question. Oh, that is also helpful, was a reminder that a friend gave me beforehand and said, if you have questions for them too, or like please ask them at the end, because then you'll kind of be informed on what experience you'll be having in a lab as well. And that can help you choose between the labs, or even if it's something that you end up wanting to add to your schedule at all.
Okay. Our next question, what's the difference between URAP and SPUR?
Yeah, I can take that one. So URAP is a university-wide research opportunity. So all departments on campus and all the faculty on campus post their projects for URAP. And so you'll have a really cool wide variety of like history research projects and chemistry and all kinds of stuff. And sometimes there are also CNR faculty that post to URAP as well as to SPUR. But in general, URAP projects are a lot more competitive because you're competing against the whole university. Whereas for SPUR, it's RCNR faculty working with RCNR students. And so the pool for applications is just a lot smaller. And so while SPUR is still competitive, it's less competitive than URAP. I'll also add that like you can technically participate in URAP and SPUR in the same semester. But in general, I'm a less is more person. I recommend focusing on one thing and doing it really well rather than spreading yourself too thin. So if you do get a UREP and a SPUR, I encourage you to think really hard about what you want your semester to look like and which project is calling to you more. Also recognizing that if you take both of those research opportunities, one person might not get any.
Thank you. Okay, this will be our last question. What have been your favorite memories or your favorite days when doing research?
Yeah, I can start us off. Actually, funnily enough, it was yesterday, and Nadia was there with me. Again, funnily enough. I was in the Dawson lab with Jill, my grad student. Um, we were, I was learning from Yarrow, Nadia's grad student, how to do a specific procedure that Jill and I were going to be doing later. And that was within the Dawson lab because they had all the equipment that we needed. And then after that, we were organizing pinyon pine needle samples in like a huge table. It was kind of a mess, but we organized it all. Yeah, it was really nice to, well, because last semester I had been doing primarily R work, so making graphs and like data analysis for climate data from our Colorado field site. This semester I'm doing more hands-on, more lab work that I'm super excited about. So yeah, yesterday was great for that, and I'm really excited to keep going with that this semester.
One of my favorite days was also yesterday because it was so cool to get to collaborate with so many different people and be in a room together. And I felt like I was getting an experience I wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't have done SPUR by just being together with those people. And then also, like a silly memory was the struggle of me and the other SPUR student who was working with Yarrow. We were collecting tiny, tiny little needle samples in the really, really hot Oxford tract greenhouse. And don't underestimate how hot that could get. It was the end of the semester in December, and they always will tell you to dress appropriately. And we were all rolling up our sleeves in our pants and just collecting these tiny needles. So that was very fun.
I think some of my favorite memories have been connecting. I went to the lab meetings in my lab last semester. And they were so cool. If you have the opportunity to go to your lab's lab meetings, 100% go because you learn so much But some of my favorite moments have been connecting things that people were presenting in the lab to things that I was learning about in my classes and just being like, oh, that's what that graph I saw in lab reading was. Or being like, we just talked about that. And just like making all those little connections and feeling really integrated and immersed in the subject.
All right, thank you all for sharing. Like I mentioned, that was our last question. So we are all done today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.